Hurricane Island. Once it was a thriving community based on a single industry, granite. From 1870 to 1914, the island's quarry sent granite to ports up and down the eastern seaboard. It boasted a post office, a school, and all the infrastructure needed to support a growing community. Then, the introduction of concrete in construction meant a sudden decline in the demands for granite, and the island community disappeared. Today, the island serves as an outpost for the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School. Aside from that, all you'll find are old granite foundations of houses and stores, and even a church, constructed in 1900. The equipment that once hauled granite from the quarry to the dock now lies rusting, grown up with weeds. For nearly a century, Hurricane Island has been a ghost town. Hurricane is just one example of the decline in year-round island populations. From a high of 300 such islands, now just 14 have year-round communities, and they face a precarious future. It's possible one or more of these 14 might become only summer havens. But is that really bad?
Islands are unique. They're unique laboratories to see how man and nature can work things out together.
Having kids out here, they get to grow up not only with brothers and sisters, but that's how everybody feels with your neighbor. It's like having a brother or a sister that lives up the road because you know you can always count on them. And that's an important lesson for not only kids to have, but for adults, that you can rely and trust somebody. And I don't feel that you get that in a lot of areas.
You got cell phones, you've got instant communication, you got all this stuff, and how important is it really? What's important to me is when the tide comes, because it means I can do my work of some sort or other, or when it goes, I can do other work. I think that idea of making life more elemental and having an example, a model of that kind of living, I think is probably worth something for a lot of people.
Islands share a unique place in Maine's history and culture. They were among the first places to be settled. In the days before highways, they were significant stops along the shipping routes between Europe and the East Coast. Sturdy ships were built here, and for generations they were sailed around the world by island-born captains. Maine's islands became a major source for the raw materials a growing nation needed. Granite from their quarries built monuments and significant buildings throughout the Northeast. Island fishermen helped feed a growing population. Over the years, their isolation and beauty have inspired creativity. Dozens of world-renowned artists have painted on Maine's islands. And just after 9/11, the people of North Haven brought their musical Islands to New York's Broadway, a gift from one island to another. If the year-round community that lives on these islands that lay off the coast of Maine are going to survive, they're going to need to deal with the very real problem of a declining population. There are certain core institutions that depend on a certain critical mass for them to continue to exist. Institutions like the school, like the church, the store, the post office. Why, even the ferry service depends on a certain basic number of people for it to continue. But it takes a very special person to live on an island year-round.
What it takes is a lot of hard work.
Well, you got to want it for one.
I think you have to be independent, you have to be self-reliant.
I think you just need to have respect towards the people around you.
You got to be neighborly, you got to be self-reliant.
You've got to be tough, you've got to be resourceful.
You've got to be somebody that doesn't have to have a lot of entertainment, you can entertain yourself.
Being able to help out when you're asked, but also being able to ask for help.
But even those with the right skills and mindset find it increasingly difficult to stay on their island. It's a matter of affordability. Nearly everything islanders need must come in by boat. And that has always meant higher prices for everyday purchases. At the local store, and at the gas pump. But today, the biggest barrier to island living is the cost of housing. Oceanfront property has become especially desirable and ever more scarce. The law of supply and demand means prices are soaring.
If you're looking for anything with shore frontage, you're now talking $200,000 an acre. If there's a building on it, God help you. People can't afford that unless they're very wealthy.
It's a desirable place to have a home, especially a vacation home. And it's those people who already have homes who seem to have the funds, and the people that are scraping along and who would like to be here as residents are new families. They don't have the means to compete with that.
If seasonal residents are the main cause of the affordability crisis, islanders are also quick to point out that seasonal residents have also played a major role in sustaining year-round island communities.
You know, those are people who get out and participate in the community and work for community things and appreciate the value of having a year-round island.
We'll take a look at the specific challenges faced by some of Maine's islands, starting with the Cranberry Isles. Actually, two island communities, Islesford and Great Cranberry, both located about 3 miles off the southern tip of Mount Desert Island. Great Cranberry once had a bustling village, several stores, and an active waterfront. The census of 1909 lists more than 275 residents. Today, the island's population hovers around 45, barely enough to support community infrastructure. Added to that is the fact that the majority is over 60. With fewer people today, especially young families, there has been a significant drop in the number of school-aged children on the Cranberry Islands.
The tail starts growing and it starts to fan out.
Once both communities had active schools. Now there's just this one on Islesford.
What you're going to do is you're going to move it the same as you did yesterday.
You know, one of the reasons for the population decline on these islands, quite frankly, is the collapse of the ground fishing industry. Lobstering, that's going just great. But these young families that want to move on and get a foothold, they just can't do it. The cost of housing is just too great.
Well before my time, I mean, houses traded for several $1,000s. And I think the cheapest house in the market now is between $300,000 and $400,000. And, you know, that's sort of a distressed sale.
Recognizing the need for affordable housing to bolster population, in 1999, islanders formed the Cranberry Isles Realty Trust, or CIRT.
I think it promises to be a very important force in keeping the island alive. I would have dim hopes for any Maine island that didn't have some kind of group like that did the hard stuff of figuring out how to make housing affordable.
As a nonprofit organization, CIRT was able to use grants and donations to acquire this house, move it to this site, and make it into affordable housing. Richard and Ingrid Gaither moved into another CIRT house. They came to Maine from North Carolina and hoped to start a family here on Great Cranberry.
If it was not for the CIRT housing, I'm positive we would not be able to have an island life if it was not for the CIRT housing. And so we're very, very grateful for that.
Part of the problem on the Cranberries and other islands is that island economies don't fit the familiar profiles you find on the mainland. And that can be a problem when government funders evaluate an island's need for help.
The biggest thing is they think that everyone out here is rich. They're not. We have a lot of wealthy people who have property, but when they look at the permanent community, and that has to be explained to them, who is truly living here, well, then it's a different situation.
Great Cranberry surmounted another challenge that threatened its infrastructure, a decision by the state's Department of Environmental Protection to remove the Harborside Fuel Depot. It was Great Cranberry's only source for gasoline, and its loss created a hardship for islanders.
They were literally, it was going off the mainland with these big 5-10 gallon jugs, going to the gas stations, filling them up and then hauling them back.
The solution? This self-service gas station and new fuel tank. It was the result of a concerted community-wide effort.
We raised money through donations, bake sales, crash sales, anything that the island could do to get the money together. I mean, it was a whole community-wide effort.
For the future, there could be more donations of land or housing. When that happens, CERT leaders say they'll be ready. The next stop is Monhegan, about 10 miles off Pemaquid Point. The island's cliffs and pounding surf started to attract a host of respected painters during the mid-1800s. In the past, Rockwell Kent, George Bellows, and other luminaries painted here. Today, artists still flock to Monhegan, all inspired by the island's beauty. That beauty has made Monhegan particularly attractive to would-be summer residents. Demand for housing is outstripping supply, and prices are rising. The housing shortage is particularly acute here because there's virtually no available land. Years ago, Monhegan made the decision to place 65% of its land into a permanent land trust, a move that has boosted prices even further.
It makes it a lot more expensive, and we feel that's worth it, but it's a struggle. This land trust is dedicated to keeping the community going and has in the past given some land to build year-round housing on. But we didn't want to continue that. We wanted to have a housing program and conservation.
In 2000, this building with its very popular store and 2 apartments was for sale. The islanders were concerned about plans to convert it to an apartment and then rent it, along with the other apartments, to seasonal visitors at a price which islanders could not afford. They turned to the Genesis Fund, which provides expertise and loans for community groups throughout the state.
Genesis came in and actually helped us get the financial and the legal footing under all of this. I mean, we had ideas, and we had mailing lists, and we had a lot of the sort of nitty-gritty stuff, but Genesis really helped.
We did it through a lot of community meetings, trying to find out what the community really wanted and was willing to work for. And we did it with a lot of phone calls to Genesis to find out if these things were doable and the best way to proceed.
Today, thanks to grants and fundraising and flexible financing from Camden National Bank, the 2 apartments have been converted into affordable condominiums. And there's a new store on the ground floor. It has become a favorite meeting place for islanders, right in the heart of the village. A small but meaningful step in the efforts to create affordable housing and a model for the future. The next stop, Vinyl Haven, the largest and most populous of Maine's islands. Vinyl Haven is, in many ways, an island success story. The population is stable and large enough to support a wide range of community services.
Thank you.
The downtown is healthy and even boasts the only bank on an offshore island.
£1.50.
Lobster is king here. Total landings in 2002 topped 8 million pounds, making Vinyl Haven one of Maine's busiest ports.
Yeah, 75.
To be sure, Vinyl Haven shares many of the challenges of other islands, including a lack of affordable housing. But here the community saw a more critical need. Vinyl Haven has more people over 75 than any other island. In the past, when they became frail, one of their only options was to move to an off-island nursing home, away from family and friends.
You grow up in a community, you take part in that community, you make relationships and friendships that go on forever, and then at some point you're uprooted and detached from all of this. There's got to be a crushing blow.
Now the island has this new elder care facility, and it has made a real difference in the lives of those who live here.
They not only get to see their family and friends that live in the same neighborhood, but if one person comes in to visit one of the ladies, everybody knows everybody. So
this is a door, one of those door points that goes around the edge of the garden.
The Elder Care Center is a bright and airy place, and for the half-dozen residents here, it feels like home.
Well, I had to wait until this room was finished before I could get in. And I'm so glad, because what a room this is. I love it. I really do. I love being here. I'm comfortable and, contented, happy.
The new facility is the product of a focused local effort, combined with grant money and donations. But it needed a catalyst. Enter the Genesis Fund.
There were a number of people involved in this, and we were all bringing our own life experiences into this. Some are very capable about dealing with finances, some with people, relationships, all of these. It was all brought together, and we needed someone to guide us, to put us on the right track and trail, on the right pathway to making this a reality. And that's where we ran into Genesis.
Plans are in the works for further expansion of facilities and amenities. Our last visit is Frenchboro, 6 miles off MDI's southwest coast. Its first settlers came from Massachusetts in the 1760s to fish for cod and haddock. Today, fishing is still the foundation of the local economy. But as the fortunes of the fishing industry rose and fell, so did Frenchboro's population. The declines were keenly felt in the local school, where there were times when only one student was enrolled.
It was a couple of decades ago that the people here on Frenchboro decided that the population decline had become a crisis. And so they did something extraordinary. They created a subdivision and offered homes and building lots to those who would move out here to the island year-round and become a part of the community.
A first group of homesteaders was attracted by news stories in the national media, but the new settlers just didn't take.
They had a low point of fishing, and most of these people weren't in the fishing business. So they had to start off by buying a boat, buying gear, then they had to pay for the rent on the house, and the catch was down for about 3 or 4 years, right at the lowest point it was going to be, and they just didn't survive.
The island tried again. This time, they used lessons learned from the first homesteading effort.
We found out that the best way to go into the business was to have people from Maine who was already in the fishing business and didn't like, for one reason or another, where they were and was ready for a move. And because then all they had to do was pay for the house. They already had their boat and the gear, and so this seemed to make more sense, and it seemed to work out good.
Today, all the houses and building lots are occupied. And down at the school, there are now 5 students, one heading to high school on the mainland. Here they're watching videos produced by 2 of the students. But there's something even more remarkable happening at the parsonage next door.
Down came the good fairy, and she said, "Little Bonnie Foo-Foo, I don't want to see you scooping up the field mice and bop 'em on the head."
It's a busy, new preschool.
Fairy, and she said. We put out applications and we opened the doors for the first ever preschool on Frenchboro Island in September of 2003. And this year is going to be my first preschool graduate. Yes, I'm going to cry at his graduation, I can tell.
What do you guys think is different about living on an island?
What about the next generation of islanders? While some will undoubtedly be lured to the mainland, others are already committed to the island life.
I love to be here. I've gone away for amounts of time, and it's just something I always enjoy to come back. And I assume it'll last me my whole life, just the impact that it's had on me. Keep drawing me back.
Those young islanders who decide to stay will have to face the challenges of change.
I feel like this is a crucial period in history about whether or not islands are going to be able to continue. I mean, there is enormous change going on. There are big summer houses being built, there are declining school populations. It's scary to watch, and as a policymaker, I mean, it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Overall, efforts to sustain island communities have met with more successes than failures. With each result comes the experience to know what it takes to get the project done.
Living on an island or living any place it's more than just being successful yourself. It's important that the entire community is successful, and to do that, individuals in the community have to step up and work, and that's what's happened here, and it's really made a difference, and it's reassuring to see that you can make a serious difference in your community with a little hard work.
What's at stake? Preserving a way of life that can continue to inspire us all.
We have a community here that takes care of its own. If someone is sick, people go with soup. If someone is dying, people take turns sitting with the person. If someone is expecting a baby and needs help, there's help. If somebody is having hard times, there's support. I think in this world, I think if there were more communities like this, I think it'd be a much more peaceful place.
We are here and we are building community, for good or bad. It's what we make of it, and it's how we pull together that makes it happen.
Help sustain year-round island communities by making a tax-deductible donation to the Genesis Islands Fund at the Maine Community Foundation. This fund will match dollars raised by island residents and contribute directly to efforts to create permanently affordable housing and needed facilities on Maine's islands. Send your donation to Maine Community Foundation Genesis Islands Fund, 245 Main Street, Ellsworth, Maine, 04605. Find out more about efforts to sustain year-round island communities by contacting Genesis Community Loan Fund, P.O. Box 609, Damariscotta, Maine, 04543. Phone 207-563-6073, or on the web at www.genesisfund.org. This video was made possible through grants to the Genesis Fund from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Rural Housing and Economic Development Program, and the Birch Cove Fund at the Maine Community Foundation.